Hello and welcome to the Glamptuary Podcast, where we talk about the experiential outdoor hospitality industry, and I am your host, Bobby Marsden. When life gives you lemons, innovators make lemonade, and that's exactly what Ben Wolff did when his RV broke down on his honeymoon. Standing on the side of the road, he said to himself, there has to be a better way to enjoy nature, and I would tend to agree. Ben created that better way by launching the hugely successful treehouse resort Onera, which is located in Texas. And Ben continues to be a leader in the outdoor hospitality space as CEO of OASI, which is a strategic management and consulting firm with a $65 million portfolio of landscape hotels and luxury retreats. In this episode, Ben describes how that honeymoon inspired him to become the tour de force that he is. And he also provides some amazing insights into the often confusing world of social media. He has millions of views on his content, and he shares some secret sauce that can help content creators who are out there trying to make their social posts rise to the top. So buckle up, prepare to learn, and enjoy episode 7 on season 4 of the Glamptuary Podcast. Ben Wolff, wonderful to have you on the Glamptuary Podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Bobby.
I want to dive right into how you got into outdoor hospitality. And I was listening to a podcast you were on, and it seems like you had a very adventurous honeymoon that led to an epiphany because you had been in New York and you were working in short-term rentals, and then something happened on your honeymoon, and then you said, you know what, I want to work in outdoor hospitality. Walk us through your honeymoon.
Yeah, so our honeymoon was a whirlwind 6-week adventure across the southwestern U.S. and into California. So I actually borrowed an RV from a buddy of mine who lived in Joshua Tree, who actually happens to be my business partner now in OASI. So I picked up his RV in Joshua Tree, and we went Joshua Tree up to Zion, over to Bryce Canyon, up to Arches. I mean, we did this whole loop, Mesa Verde, which was one of the most exciting, cool places I've been to. If you guys haven't been, it's cliffside dwellings, like one of a kind. And then moving down Grand Canyon, Chaco Canyon, actually in New Mexico. So we hit a whole bunch of places, right? We hit, I think, 12 national parks in 6 weeks. And we were coming from Manhattan. We lived in New York City for over a decade. And so getting out, experiencing the great outdoors, going to all these like incredibly beautiful places that America has to offer that we didn't even really realize or appreciate when we were in New York City, I think was a big part of the inspiration behind getting into outdoor hospitality and doing something like that. I will say that RV life definitely came with a lot of gaffes and challenges. So we had one instance where our DPF filter, basically a diesel filter, went out, and it put us into this like special mode where we couldn't go above 15 miles an hour. And so we're doing that for 5 hours trying to get from Mesa Verde to Albuquerque, where the closest dealership was. Thanks, Mercedes, because we had a Mercedes chassis and you can't get them, fixed at just any shop. So we had to go all the way to the dealership. Anyways, there was that. There was a compartment on the side of the RV that broke, and our stuff, got littered on the highway. So all these things that happened that kind of took us out of the awe and wonder of the great outdoors. And so when I went to create something outdoor hospitality related, I wanted, yes, inspirational nature, and yes, all the great outdoors has to offer, but try to minimize that friction, right? Try to minimize those things that are kind of pulling you out of being able to view wildlife, being able to connect with your loved one, reconnect with yourself, and really get in touch with the great outdoors. So the idea with Onera was, how do we make it more upscale? How do we give you all the comforts of home and then some, and really keep you in what we like to call those moments of perfection, right? Waking up with your espresso, maybe by the hot tub and watching the deers or the wild turkeys walk by in, the beautiful silence and just kind of the sounds of nature. So creating those moments and trying to allow you to stay in them instead of having to go and fix an RV.
Yeah, see, life is just a series of experiences, right? And it sounds like you had been in New York, you're working in short-term rentals, so you had a background in hospitality. It wasn't like it was something brand new for you, but maybe trying to figure out what the glamping side of thing was, or the outdoor hospitality side of thing, that was going to all be new. Did you just dive right in, or did you have a mentor, or how did Onera kind of come to be?
Yeah, so I had some experience with hospitality for sure. I mean, we had started with urban short-term rentals. I built up a management company basically with city short-term rentals, and that grew from 8 units under management we grew it to over 200 by the time that it was kind of at its height right before COVID. So I had some experience there. I was also a nightclub promoter, so I understood like hospitality from that perspective before I got into short-term rentals. And I worked for another short-term rental management company before I started my own. That was actually founded by my business partner in OASI now, Jesse, whose RV that I mentioned that I borrowed. And when he moved on from that company, he bought a property in Joshua Tree and basically created this compound of glamping, unique stays before it was really, I would say, big. I mean, early days of auto camp, even early-ish days of under canvas, pre-COVID. And he had this converted garage and a bus and this retired Cessna airplane that was really just like an art sculpture on the property.
Sounds awesome.
It was cool, but like, very kind of kitschy, right? It was not, as upscale and elevated as my vision, but even still, just the great outdoors, the expanse of the desert, the Joshua trees, and these kind of unique, kind of quirky units. He was doing like 3x, 4x what sort of more typical cabins and smaller homes were doing in the area. And so that really turned me on to this idea of unique stays, outdoor. And I just kind of iterated on that, right? I was like, I want to take it to the next level. I also saw in the market, you had auto camp, you had under canvas, you had a number of these players that were in more of like the mid-tier, I would say, more mass market, where you're a step above roughing it. Right. Under canvas, you don't have temperature control, right? It's a tent. Auto camp, you're in a 180 square foot, very small space. So I was like, how can we take it to the next level and play in this white space between the auto camps and the under canvases, and then like the Amangiris and the post ranch inns, right? Which are on the totally other extreme of luxury, but still landscape hotels, still inspiring nature focused stay. So I really think Onera is in that sweet spot, kind of in the middle that, Live Oak Lake, Bolt Farm Treehouse, like a lot of these other unique stays operators have found a lot of success in that sort of Goldilocks zone in the middle.
Right. Well, I heard a quote and you said we're reimagining hospitality for the modern traveler. And I think it's a great statement. And I also think it raises some questions. I think the first one I would say is, what is the modern traveler?
Yeah. So the modern traveler, we think about a little bit as an archetype, right? So this person is the trendsetter, the one that like has the cool story of the fun trip that you're asking, where did you go? Right. They're kind of the influencer among their social circle, if you will. They might, they might drive a Tesla. They might have an Apple Watch. They're kind of this like forward thinking, on the cusp of innovation, early adopter. So we think of that person as the modern traveler, and that's who we're trying to cater to. And the modern traveler wants tech forward, right? They don't want a clunky check-in desk experience. They want shareability, right? They want a stay that's going to create a story and that just screams, take a photo or take a video of me and share it with your people. So that's what the modern traveler wants. That's kind of like social currency today, right? It's the stories, it's the posts, it's the media, it's all these things that I'm getting from staying at this, one of a kind, highly unique, experiential place.
So that's a great segue then to OASI, because OASI is your management side of things. And I think social media, from what it looks like on social, it looks like you're knocking it out of the park as far as how you approach it. I think when social started, it was a lot organic based. Now it's kind of pay to play, but there's certainly a technique that seems to cut through the clutter. Can you talk a little bit about what you see working in the social space and how you've applied that to outdoor hospitality, but even maybe how you've applied it to even traditional hotels?
Yeah. And look, I think there's a pay to play component, but good content still works organically. You don't have to pay to play. You just need to have a really good content. And to some extent, it gets harder and harder, right? Because there is so much more content today. So you're competing against so many others. It's also changed. So in some ways, it's become easier if you're new, because the algorithms are not favoring big accounts. They're mostly showing your stuff to non-followers. Right. And if it does well with non-followers, then it can explode from there, even if you have a new account with no followers. So in that way, it's easier. But if you're new, you're probably not going to be amazingly good at content. So it's challenging, we'll just say, and it really needs to be invested in. But I mean, we look at it like we are in this social media revolution, right? There's 5 billion people spending multiple hours a day on social media. And so to not try to meet them where they are is crazy to us, even though that's what a lot of traditional hotels do, right? They don't, they're focused on, maybe it's paid ads, maybe it's SEO, maybe it's PR, and social is kind of more of an afterthought and more of just, got to have a pretty grid, fit our brand standards, things like that, but it's not actually driving bookings. So we fundamentally believe that social and organic content is the way. Now, with that said, if we have a great piece of organic content that does well, we might put some boost dollars behind it to push it further because it's already proven. We might repurpose it into an ad because it's a proven piece of creative that is going to have, just basically be more of an efficient ad, lower cost, bigger reach, more engagement.
You said something about there's viral and then there's engagement and bookings. And you can have a video that gets 1 billion views, but if no one books your property, it doesn't really matter. And so, are there platforms out there or techniques that you would recommend entrepreneurs that are running their own outdoor hospitality resorts to start to think about, okay, I want a lot of eyeballs on this. Hearts make me feel good, but what really makes me feel good is engagement and bookings.
Yeah. And look, I do think that in most cases, they go hand in hand. If you have a piece of content that goes viral, it's because it has high engagement, right? That's like how the algorithms work. If people are sharing it, I mean, that's the biggest metric that leads to virality. So if some piece of content is so great that you feel compelled to share it with somebody else, then the algorithm knows like, okay, this is great. We're going to show it to more people. So they go hand in hand. And I will say too, like if something goes viral, even if it's a small percentage of your target audience, you're still likely to hit more people, right? I mean, if your video does 1 million views and only 10% of them are relevant, that's a bigger number than if you did, 5,000 views and 100% of them are relevant, right?
Right.
So virality and total view count definitely still matters. And the algorithms have gotten really good at showing the right content to the right audience, right? They have billions of dollars of valuation because they're really good at showing the right content to the right audience. So don't discount that. If you make good stuff, they're going to get it in front of the right people. Now, with all that said, you can do certain things to increase your chances, I think, of engagement and therefore virality and therefore bookings. Now, one thing I'll say that might be counterintuitive, don't say book now. Nobody wants to be sold to, right? Nobody wants to feel like there's a sales pitch. So create a great piece of content and then say like, share it with a loved one, share this with a third person on your follow list. Like those sorts of things, I think help to promote engagement. Maybe ask for a comment, like comment if you feel this way or that way, or comment a certain thing. Those sorts of things create engagement and feel more collaborative as opposed to just being sold to. So I would highly recommend that. Up front and center at the beginning of your video, call out your target audience, right? So call out where it is and who you're trying to speak to. If it's a romantic couples getaway, then say that, or say some version of that, right? And if it's in, Southern California, say that. If it's in the Texas Hill Country, say that, so that when somebody sees it in their feed and they're only an hour or two away, they might say, oh, this is for me. I'm going to watch the video. So there's simple things that you can do, I think, to speak to your audience more quickly and more transparently, and then also how you can collaborate with your audience more so than just trying to sell to them, because everybody hates ads. Nobody wants to be sold to. The more your ad feels like an organic piece of content and not an ad, the better.
Yeah, I agree. Coming from 20 years of advertising, definitely agree. What's your thoughts on influencers? That's obviously social content. They have a presence there. Do you have any recommendations or suggestions to use, not use? If you're going to use, do it this way. Yeah,
I mean, influencers totally depend on the product, right? Is this a fly-to destination? Then you're probably going to want big national influencers, which are expensive for the good ones. Is this a more local market, drive-to? Like a lot of the stuff that we've done has been more drive-to destination. Texas Hill Country, 90 plus some odd % of our visitors are from the Texas Triangle. Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, Austin. So we're pulling influencers from those places and that have audiences in those places. And not only, location matters, but also the relevance, right? Is it a travel influencer? We have found good crossover with some categories like foodies, for example. So foodie accounts have a lot of crossover with hospitality. So we've found good, good crossover there. And But if you're like a fitness influencer account, or if you're like a TV star and you don't have authority in terms of travel, then it's unlikely that your post is going to generate a lot of bookings, a lot of follows, high engagement, because there's a mismatch between why your audience follows you and the kind of content that this collab about a stay is. So those are some tips. Certainly want high engagement. You don't want somebody with 1 million followers that's consistently putting out videos with singles or even tens of thousands of views. You want somebody that has some multi-million view videos, some videos with 100,000 plus views. If it's a smaller influencer though, like let's say it has 10, 20, 30,000 followers, then maybe 5 to 15,000 for most of their videos and the occasional 50 to 100,000 video. Like that makes sense from an engagement perspective. So it does kind of depend on the size of the account. And for whatever reason, we have found, and this is somewhat anecdotal, so I'm sure it depends on the influencer, but at least when it comes to more local influencers, usually the best ones are in this like $3,000 to $5,000 a collab range. But we might do $30,000 in direct bookings. So there's a 8 to 10x ROI. Totally makes sense. National influencers can be much as like 10K plus because they have a bigger audience. They're driving from a bigger pool. And then there's the kind of micro influencers that might be free. They might be a couple $100. I would be wary of the middle zone. So like 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. Typically, we've found that those influencers are basically trying to get higher rates because they think they can. They may not be fully worth it because the ones that are fully worth it can charge even more than that. And the ones that are kind of smaller but still drive high engagement and they're going to charge less than that. So watch out for kind of that middle zone, I would say.
Right. It's great advice. So obviously most of the content I think can be what's in the background, what's the environment. And so would you recommend, thinking about building your property with putting in some Instagrammable places, Instagrammable locations, giving opportunities to whether it's an influencer, whether it's just me coming, I'm not an influencer, but I might take a photo that does really well because it's a great environment. Do people want to think about incorporating those things into their builds and the design of their property?
I mean, I think you have to today. I think it's such a missed opportunity to not think that way. I mean, we're asking our videographers and photographers, how can we make this better next time? Right. I mean, I'm asking content creators what we can do to make this place shoot better, to make it come across better, because you're selling a story, right? You're selling, you're basically trying to create emotion and inspiration in your audience. And so in order for that to convey, you need to do certain things with the design. And there's things that I've learned. There's things that I've thought would work better that actually don't translate as well as I thought. Like one great example. So Monarch is our most Instagrammable treehouse at Onera, Fredericksburg, the first location. It's got the double peaked roof. It's very dramatic. You almost can't take a bad picture of it from the exterior, right? And it screams when you see it. I'm going to whip my phone out, which is kind of a good litmus test for us. But when you go inside, it's kind of choppy, right? So it's like 2 smaller rooms that are offset. You can only catch a little bit of the bed when you're in the living area in one shot. So it doesn't come through in terms of how grandiose and nice the place is in one interior shot. Whereas Spyglass, you have this like rounded barrel and you can get an entire shoot through moment from one side of the unit all the way out the back, see the hot tub and the view in one shot. Okay. So we kind of realized, wow, that's the banger interior shot. We have the banger exterior shot with Monarch. How do we get both? And how we got both on our expansion to Onera, Fredericksburg, we have a new unit called Diamond, which is actually 2 diamonds. And those diamonds are smushed together a little bit more than Monarch, for example. There's less offset. So you can still get that great shoot through moment, but you still have some of that like architectural intrigue and novelty of the shape. So that's just one example. I think something else that I've come to believe more so recently, for a while I was into this idea of having the unit like blend in to nature. And I think that can work really well, but sometimes actually it's the contrast that accentuates nature and comes across better in the photo or the video. So like, black, right? A very like hard straight line that's dramatic, or a very like unique inorganic shape can actually pop off the page more and help to even highlight and accentuate the nature as well.
Yeah. Which presents a challenge for mirror cabins.
It does. And I do think though, mirror cabins, there's a little bit of, there's some exception there because there's this wow moment of like, oh, when you realize that actually is a home and it's not just blending in, it has some reflection to it. So you can still tell. So it still pops. And like a lot of those homes, they still have hard lines, right? So you can see the dichotomy with the natural surrounding.
Yeah. I've seen a few up close, been inside of them, but yes, I could certainly see instances where it just blends in and what am I looking at? There's nothing popping off the page. It's just a bunch of trees.
Yeah. And the other thing with mirror cabins is that they're becoming so pervasive. It's like, for how long are those going to be really highly unique and what I consider one of one?
Yeah. And that's also one of the advantages I think about their hospitality is, the rules are kind of still being written. It's not like hotel where it's box, 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 room, room, room. You can be very, imaginative when you come up with these structures where you place them. And if you're thinking about photography, like you just said, I think it's just only going to help your marketing. So thinking about Onera, to jump back to that, when you were starting that, what were some of the things that happened that you were just like, oh my God, I never planned for this? Or what were some of the just crazy challenges that you faced as you were bringing your first property into the real world?
Well, it was during like peak COVID. So we had to deal with supply shortages and labor shortages and budget overruns and a whole host of things. I think that one of our biggest mistakes and learnings was worked with a few different modular and sort of kit manufacturers in China. And I did not have boots on the ground there, didn't have the right quality control, did not have enough experience in doing that. We were just working through a broker that was more of a consumer electronics broker than he was like a glamping structures broker. And that led to a lot of issues. So we had, I think 6 structures that we imported, and all of them had issues. We had to redo a lot of the interiors. They had no instructions, right? So we had to pay a lot in local labor to sort of figure out how to make these things work. Our cocoon tent came in like 3 feet difference in one of the dimensions. So like the concrete footings we had poured didn't work. So like there was some real nightmares. The yurt that we got, we had said over and over and over again, this was like modern, minimal, no fancy artwork. And it came with like, the traditional Mongolian artwork. And we're like, this isn't going to work. There's nothing we can do. We basically had to toss it. And we ended up working with Bush Tech, who was great. We replaced it with a Bush Tech tent and they were wonderful. So yeah, I think I learned on that one, penny wise, pound foolish. I work with much more reputable suppliers, those that are referred to us, often local. If not, then we have some real quality control. We visit the manufacturing facility, and there's just plenty of due diligence done to ensure that we get a good product.
Yeah. I've heard some other supply chain nightmares are just, what you see isn't necessarily what you get. And then once you get it, you got to figure out what to do. When you got up and running, did you find that reaching customers was a challenge? Did you find that your tech stack was maybe inadequate, not right? Had too much of it? How did that process go as far as like the infrastructure for operating your business once the structures were in place and you were ready to bring guests in?
So originally, no, honestly, we had COVID tailwinds. So, we put up a listing on Airbnb and it was like, we're booked out, Nice. So that's more so the original experience that we had at great rates, $500 to $600 a night. We were at, in the mid 80s, even up over 90% occupied for some of our units. But we were, paying Airbnb a good percentage, right? 14, 15% plus. And that's all I knew going in, right? I had more commodity style city vacation rentals. And so we had always used Airbnb and Vrbo and Booking.com and Expedia. And so that was the plan and the roadmap that I was familiar with. So that's kind of how we started. But I had a local travel creator, Texas Explorer, that reached out to me on Airbnb and said, hey, I love your place. Can I come out and do a collab post showing it off to my followers? And, I wasn't even really using Instagram at the time, and we didn't even have a direct booking website. We were pretty happy with our little Airbnb business. And, but I'm certainly one to test things. And, I'm like, what's the downside? Might as well give it a try. We wanted to do our own website at some point. We just hadn't gotten around to it yet. So spun up a website. We spun up an Instagram account, and she came out. She did 2 posts for us. And across those 2 posts, we did about $30,000 in direct bookings. And so that really turned me on to the power of social, the power of influencers. And that's what we really leaned into that first year. Because it was relatively low lift. And I think that it's a great strategy early on to lean into influencers, like, leverage all their networks, build up your account. It's like great for the first year. I mean, if you really need to, you can rely largely on them. We did about 30% direct, just relying on influencers. So a considerable percentage. I'll tell you, we're at 80% now. So there's certainly a lot of room to bump that. But we did great with influencers. And then in that second year, we wanted to take it to the next level. And so we tried to hire an agency, and more of a traditional hotel social media agency. They had some great logos, the Ritz-Carlton, Four Seasons, the Line Hotel in Austin. So they were working with a bunch of these great brands. And I was blown away at the lack of performance for us in the first few months. And we had a pretty Instagrammable product. I was surprised that they weren't able to grow it faster. They were actually growing slower than I was, just managing it on my own, kind of on the side. And so at that point, me and my partner, Jesse, were basically just like, we got to bring this in house. We got to figure out how we can create a team that's actually going to put out really phenomenal content that has the chance to go viral and all the rest. So we did that. We set out to build that team, and we did. We brought in top videographers, editors, creative associates, and now influencer managers, on-screen text people. I mean, we've gotten like very specialized as we've grown. We have, getting close to 20 people now just on the marketing and social media side of things. OASI in its totality is getting close to 30. So it's grown, and we've gone from really just servicing our own properties and creating content and doing social media marketing for our own properties, which got us to 80% direct bookings, very high rates, high occupancy. And other folks started seeing that, and we had this team. So we started offering the service to other folks. First, like our friends, people that came inbound, mostly people in the unique stays space. I don't know if you've seen Spoon Mountain, but they're actually one that's pretty close to Onera Wimberley in the Texas Hill Country. And we, produced phenomenal results for them. I mean, we've tripled their following from 30,000 to 100,000 followers. They've had like a dozen videos go viral, maybe more. The top one around 6 million views, something like that. So, and just saw a real transformation in revenues as well. Like since we took over their marketing as well as their revenue management, because I would say pricing and revenue management is another area that we have a lot of edge and sophistication. They saw their revenues bump about 68% from the year before we were helping them to the first year that we were.
I love that you're taking what you've learned and applying it to people that could be competitors, because it sounds like what you're trying to do is raise awareness about good hospitality.
Yeah, I would say so. And I mean, I definitely have an abundance mentality. I think that, look, Spoon Mountain's a different product. I mean, it's a tented product. They have 3 units. We're probably not going to do social media marketing for something that's like the same exact product right next door. We probably wouldn't, do that for a client either. So I think there is a line, but by and large, I mean, if we can attract more eyeballs and more visibility to experiential hospitality, unique stays, then I think we're doing a service to the traveler, and we're doing a service to the industry to create more exposure, to make more people aware of this, right? As you said, it's like, where do I go to find this? Where do I go to look? And I think that we're, trying to fight the good fight on that front.
Yeah, I love it. You bring up a good point, and something I wanted to ask you about too is you came from the Airbnb, you leaned into that, then you transitioned more into direct bookings. What are your thoughts kind of in general about like the OTAs, how they can relate or help in outdoor hospitality? Is there an open gap in the space? Because it kind of feels like there's hundreds of properties that I don't know that they necessarily fit on Airbnb or HipCamp or Vrbo or Booking.com, Expedia. It just seems like there's so many properties that have a definitive approach that they don't feel like they have a platform that clearly represents them.
Yeah. I think that there's definitely some folks trying to go after this. I don't know that anybody's really cracked it yet. When it comes to the existing OTAs, I mean, Airbnb has like the unique category. So I think there's something there. These kind of properties do very well on Airbnb. So there's that, and they have a lot of eyeballs. But their fee structure has gotten increasingly aggressive over the years, right? So now they're between guest and host, I think it's 17 to 18% in a lot of cases. So that's a tough nut to swallow. And increasingly, they're trying to sort of make it so it's harder and harder to stand out. And so the guest almost has perfect information to be able to just value shop. So they're using this part of their brain where it's like, how much am I getting for the money? So it's pure value shopping. They're not necessarily being inspired, right? Everything kind of looks the same. It's all in the same format, which I understand is beneficial from like a UI and maybe filtering amenities and stuff like that. But as a host, as an owner, I'm trying to inspire the guest. I'm trying to like remove price sensitivity, right? And I think the best way to do that is through social media, is through content, and is through video, frankly, which I don't know why more of the OTAs have not adopted video. I think it's a much better way to see a space, to visualize yourself there, to get inspired. But yeah, I think Instagram, there's a real chance Instagram surpasses Airbnb, or, Instagram and TikTok surpass Airbnb and other OTAs as a leading booking channel and distribution channel, because it's a better experience for both the guest and the host. The guest gets to get inspired, have an emotional experience. They get to get connected to the property, maybe the founder, maybe the team. It's much more shareable. It's like built in, and it's a part of the consumer behavior on these platforms to share, and they make it super easy for you to do that. And then on the owner side, the host side, you're saving 14% on OTA fees. You're actually reaching a less price sensitive guest. So we found at Onera Wimberley, our ADR direct through social is 30% higher than OTAs, and we're pricing the same. So it's just that those guests are booking higher demand days, higher prices, farther out. They're just less price sensitive. And it makes sense, right? You see something, this one of a kind treehouse or glamping stay, whatever, and you're like, oh, I need to book this place with my wife. It doesn't matter if it's $550 or $725 a night, if you have the means to pay, right? You're going to pay, and you're not going to think twice about it. So you're reaching a less price sensitive guest, and then you get to control the guest experience from beginning to end. You get to control it from the moment they find out about you, probably through discovery on Instagram, and then all the way through until they book and they check out and hopefully are posting about their trip.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's end to end. And the great news is you don't have to be speaking on your own behalf. You have other people speaking on your behalf for you, which I've always found is so much more powerful. So what's next on the horizon for you? You have obviously a very successful property. You have a very successful management company. That seems like that would be 24/7, but something tells me you have something else in the works.
I know. Must be a sickness. So look, we're a number of things cooking and going on at various stages. So Onera Fredericksburg is expanding. I've started to post about some of this stuff on LinkedIn, sort of teasing some of the new units that we're putting out there. Some of them are just, I mentioned Diamond. We have this other one called Monolith that has a 40-foot cantilever. It's like 20 feet
names, by the way.
Yeah, it looks like it's floating, right? And it's sort of a defeating gravity type of look and feel to it. So some exciting things going on there. We're opening that in June, July. So probably public open in July, soft open in June. Scaling OASI, so growing that team. There's a lot of demand for our services on the marketing side. We're actually building some internal tools that may someday become external tools as well. I think I mentioned revenue management is a key differentiator and an area of edge for us. We just started working on some like no code, AI type software to create an internal tool. And we're pretty far along. That's going to automate a lot of what we were doing that was more manual. And then at some point, probably going to allow us to create a software around it as well. So the speed to be able to do that kind of stuff today without hardcore developers is unbelievable. It's completely shocking and completely mind blowing. That's on the OASI side. And then on the development side, working on a couple new projects that are really exciting. One of one, as I like to say, stuff that does not exist in the US, if not the world. One of those, probably the closest to really getting started on, is in South Florida. So we're bringing the Bali, Costa Rica, Tulum style bungalow experience to the US. So you
Nice.
can now get that experience with a couple hour domestic flight and a 45-minute drive, and you are immersed into this tropical landscape with exotic fruit, plants, and all of this beautiful green foliage where we have bungalows tucked in throughout. We have these grottos that we'll be developing and cultivating. This whole area has white coral limestone right below the surface. So you excavate a little bit of that and you get these crystal clear blue grottos. And it's 45 minutes from Miami. So that's the next project in development.
Nice. What's the timetable like for something like that? Let's say you get the capital, I have no doubt you will, and then you break ground in November. Like, what's the turn to when you can maybe have some guests come in?
Yeah, so this one's quicker because we're doing it modular. So that's going to make it a bit faster. And it's 20 units. So it's, I would say, it's not huge. It's on the smaller side relative to some other projects that I'm involved in. And so all that said, we'll break ground in November and we should have guests by December of the following year.
All exciting stuff, Ben. Plus you have a wife and children.
Yes. Yeah, I got 2 kids under the age of 4. So yeah, one of my kids actually just turned 4. So that is a whole new type of journey.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the pod, Ben. You're very busy, so I'm going to let you get back to it, but really appreciate all the info. Super helpful. And I will put your property yet to be built on my bucket list, and I'll look forward to coming and visiting.
Awesome. Thanks, Bobby. Really enjoyed it.
I want to thank Ben for sharing his story and for all the great tips that he provided on how to make the most out of your social media posts. Ben is a wealth of knowledge, and if you're looking for some help with your outdoor hospitality destination, Ben is the guy you want to talk to. And the way you get in touch with him is through his website, which is www.stayoasi.com. That is www.stayoasi.com. And if you'd like to follow us on the Glamptuary Podcast, you can do so on our website, which is www.glamptuary.com. That is www.glamptuary.com. You can also follow along on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Pandora Podcasts, and Amazon Music. Wherever you like to get your podcasts, we'd love for you to follow us, and we thank you for doing so. Until next time, be well.